Get ready.
Welcome to Replay, a conversation on the ins, outs, and upside downs of the games industry. I'm Greg Off. I've spent 35 years in this business, from the magazine days to running Offbase, a creative marketing agency that's worked with some of the biggest names in games. And what I've learned is the most interesting stories in gaming aren't in the reviews or the press releases, they're in the conversations. The decisions, the near misses, the moments that shaped what got made and how. That's what this show is. I'm really glad you're here, and let's get into it. Hello, everybody, and welcome. My guest today has one of the most unusual paths in this industry. He's been a brand manager, a producer, a marketing director, a co-founder, and now a studio head. He's worked at SEGA, Ubisoft, Square Enix, and helped build Compulsion Games before starting his own studio, Inevitable Studios, where he's been making a deeply personal game called Always in Mind. He calls himself a creative hybrid, and honestly, I think that undersells it. Cord Smith, welcome to Replay.
Well, thanks for having me, Greg.
Absolutely, buddy. Thank you for joining. I really appreciate you being here, and I think we're going to have some fun. So why don't we take a moment before we jump in? I've been thinking about what would that first question I would ask you, and I wanted to bring up something that you and I were talking about. We've been exchanging emails, and of course we chat on the regular, and something you said really kind of stuck with me. You both, you called us both fence jumping hybrids in one of our last emails. And I think that's probably a really great place to kick off this conversation. What does that actually mean to you? And when did you realize that that's what you were?
Early on, by my second job. By my second job in the industry, I think I realized I was a hybrid and wanted to be a hybrid. Outside looking in as a gamer my whole life and so passionate about it, I never really imagined I'd get into games, to be honest. When I was a kid, I have an old story I like to tell where one of my friends during a slumber party when we were very little turned to me, we were playing just tons of games. It was one of those slumber parties. And he turned to me out of the blue and said, "You're going to work at SEGA someday." And he remembered saying it. So when I worked at SEGA, he wrote me and said, "Do you remember when we were 11 and I told you were going to work at SEGA someday?" And I was like, "I do." But no, I think it was such a weird occurrence that I got my way into the industry. And I think your passions kind of carry you. I was lucky. It's the type of industry where you get exposed to so much. By the time I was at SEGA, there was so much I didn't know, but I thought I knew. So, from PR to licensing, how the execs work, how sales work, how retail works, all that stuff. So it was also fascinating to me. And of course, development. I think most of the gamers today, think they want to be game designers or something. And it's just fascinating because what do you know? You don't know anything. So I always stayed curious. And that was kind of me. It wasn't really about fence jumping. It wasn't, I think at Ubisoft, I was there a year to launch Far Cry and I was called a short timer. And I was like, that's the worst part of that. I'm not a short timer. It's just, I always crave new challenges. I'm always looking for something new. And I love the industry so much that every time, you pick up a stone and turn it over, you learn something new or you meet new people. My passion just kept getting regenerated. And I think that's one of the things. It's more like I was propelled to it than I was always looking for greener pastures. And and I was willing to move for my career as well, which, that's another story, but that's to my own benefit and my own detriment, right? Because I sacrificed a lot to chase my passions. Yeah. But along the way, I learned so much and I had so many great experiences. Even today, I don't want to stop that. I don't want to slow down and I continue to meet new people that inspire me all the time, yourself included. Look at us. We're fast friends. We feel like we're old friends and we're new friends. And that's the beauty of this industry.
Absolutely. And very kind of you to say, thank you. I feel it too, my friend. A couple of follow-up questions to that. Do you remember what game you were playing when your friend said that? Was it a SEGA game?
It
And
definitely
what
was the
system
Sega
was
game.
it on? Yeah.
I feel like we were on Master System that time.
Master
He was
System.
an only
Love it.
child, and he was like a game rental library. This kid had
Mm,
like 80 games, and I had to like save up allowance to buy a single game.
yeah.
So my
Yeah.
games were precious to me, but on the slumber parties, going over there was like, okay, I could try anything. We could play anything. It was definitely pre-Genesis. I'm sure it was Sega Master System at the time. Who knows? I could rattle off a ton of games that we used to play.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was beautiful. I can still remember his room because he had so many. They were like stacked on shelves, but they were stacked on top of each other. Do you know what I mean? Like it was like this
totally.
embarrassment of riches.
Yeah.
He was so
Gaming
spoiled.
Nirvana.
Yeah, you don't mind a spoiled kid when they're generous with you. You know, I never called them spoiled because I was like, that'll ruin it. No, It was wonderful. It was wonderful.
Yeah, that's awesome. And going back to like your origin story, here's something that really surprised me when I learned it. Duke English in psychology, then an MFA in fiction at Southern Illinois. You were teaching right into undergrads while working on strategy guides for Dreamcast games, right? So at what point did you think this is where I'm actually supposed to be?
Wow. Thank you for doing some research. Nobody's ever called me out for that. The Dreamcast, that was a wild story of just getting that opportunity to write for the strategy guides and then write for the magazine. That came out of nowhere. That was a lucky one. Shout out to Fran Reyes and Simon Cox for giving me a shot.
The best.
That was the era where I met Evan Schmoon, one of the coolest cats I've ever met. That was such a wild ride. I mean, I was in grad school getting the GD-ROMs. I had the ROM disk and everything to boot up my Dreamcast. People were like, what are you doing? What's happening? Why? And I'm like, I get to write about games that haven't come out yet. That was a real dream, but that was wild. That was my entry. And grad school for me, I think that was the time it turned, honestly, Greg, like my turning point of realizing that gaming could be a career for me happened in that era, but happened totally by accident. And the catalyst for it was a single email. I worked at a Babbage's that year, which is like an electronics boutique.
Of course.
That was my retail job. What a geeky summer job I had. But I loved it. And that was the year Dreamcast was on its way. So official Dreamcast magazine came out, and I read it cover to cover. It was like a short, maybe 50-page issue or something. And I loved it. And I wrote to the editor. I wrote to Simon. I sent an email and said, hey, just great issue. As a longtime Sega fan, it's so cool to see and be excited about what's to come and blah, blah, blah. And he wrote back. To his credit, he wrote back and said, hey, thanks so much. Like, we're really trying hard. And it was the most like humble, wonderful response. And then I wrote a second time and said, what about opportunities? I'm in grad school. I shot my shot. And he wrote back and said, send some samples, which I'd never considered. I'd never written a gaming review in my life, right? I'd never written a game review. And that was really exciting as an assignment because I'm in grad school and I'm doing these others. I was like, sure, I'll do this as an assignment. And I think I sent him 3 mock reviews, and he wrote back and said, come interview. And it was really weird. It became really fast. But I was in grad school. I had 2 more years of grad school. I wasn't throwing away grad school in spite of it being a very exciting opportunity. And when I said, hey, I have to politely decline, I'm not looking for a full-time role, he immediately said, well, freelance. And he threw the ball over to Fran, and Fran wrote to me and said, what do you got, kid? Like, let's see, what do you want to do? And suddenly I had assignments and I had, just the door opened so quickly. It was like wild. And that was all the crack I needed. The door cracked open. And from that point forward, it was like, okay, like the passion took root. And I realized what I knew and what I was studying and all that really had merit. And then you get lucky along the way. The opportunities I was given. These days, I don't know if they'd happen again, but
Absolutely.
Oh boy, did I jump on them.
Yeah. I would agree that is a much tougher time to break into this industry, especially, given the current state of things, which we can absolutely talk about at some point. I did want to go back to, those were like what I call the salad years, being that both of us came up on the games journalism, games media side of things. Funny story, random, non sequitur, but Evan Schmoon, I remember going on a junket. We were so young those days. Going on a junket with him to France, I think the south of France, probably for like an Ubisoft thing or something. and he decided he wanted to get a haircut, and not speaking the language, he went to go get a haircut.
No.
And the barber or whoever was running the shop told him that what he thought he heard was that he didn't have to pay for it. Or you know what? I take that back. Someone pulled him in, like hey, a guy was standing outside, come get your haircut, free of charge or something like that. And he gets his haircut, and then he goes to leave. And clearly there was a language barrier or challenge. The shop owner called the police, and he was detained and not arrested, but until they could figure out everything. It was,
oh my God.
Yeah. Anyway, whatever. It's just a funny story, and he's such a good guy. To your point,
he's amazing. Yeah, he was great.
Yeah. So going back to like those days, like what was it like writing reviews? Like, and did you feel like you had a grasp on what you need to be doing? And clearly, the team at the magazine loved your writing, or else they probably wouldn't have offered you a job. But, talk to me more about that. And also, what were some of your first reviews? Do you remember those games?
I remember my first strategy assignment was Sega Rally 2.
Oh my gosh.
I thought I was good at Sega Rally
Yeah.
before I had to write strategy for Sega Rally 2. Oh man, that was challenging. That was a lot. And it was to be paid to play a game was a new thing. You know how they say, like, it's weird for people on the outside looking in. There's that whole thing of like, you doing something you love and being paid for it should be a joy, but it's also daunting. And then ultimately you can see how it can get inverted, where you're being paid to do something, then your love of it goes out. But I didn't. It was hard. And I came away with a lot of appreciation, because it was a lot. And for a driving game to try to talk about tuning and the track and stuff, it was a little bit shallow but deep. Does that make sense? Like, as opposed to an RPG or something like that with skill trees, I think you could get into more of how the design and what the tactics and strategies would be. With the driving game, so much of it is reflexes and things like that. So, yes, there's planning. Yes, there's tuning. There's things you can do with your car. But it was almost like giving people support. Talking about which tracks were really hard for me to give them like a little bit of moral support. In terms of reviews, God, I'd have to go back. I have the magazines upstairs somewhere. I remember... what was my very first one? I didn't get the big titles. I got like the B titles on Dreamcast, and I remember I think I got to review even like things like Techromancer and some weird, like B-level Japanese style games. Yeah. And I had a lot of fun writing it. I remember the challenge being keeping it at 300 words, 150 word review, like the small little column reviews. It's like we always said in grad school, like writing fiction or writing a novel, by comparison, seems easy to a poem. Like the less words you have, the more each has to count. Yeah. So you'd think it'd be easy to distill your thoughts down, and okay, it's short, it's sweet, it doesn't need to be something simple. But I always felt challenged to make it a nugget of really beautiful wisdom. I mean, speaking of Evan, I remember Evan's review of, might have been the very first Tony Hawk Pro Skater. And his deep dive of it was so meta, because he talked about the Zen state. This was before I heard anybody ever talk about Zen states in games. He talked about the Zen state of Tony Hawk allowing you to access your own creativity. And he was like, that is the flow state of this game. You have to be creative. You can go and do anything, but the sequence by which you do it is up to you, and that is the gratification. And I was like, oh my God, I just read like a philosophy on life on Evan's 500-word review of Tony Hawk Pro Skater. So there was a high bar. I felt, there was a high bar to reach. But it was kind of dreamy, honestly, as well, because doing that is kind of almost moonlighting to teaching kids how to write a short story. Yeah. It was just a bizarre time in my life. And then, you're in grad school. I'm still in like a college town of fun. So I'm going out. I'm trying to be an adult, a teacher, a writer. I had all these things going on that were a mix. And I remember feeling really, really fortunate at the time, but also, how do I follow that up? Which then became, oh my God, now I've become addicted to being in the industry, but I'm outside looking in. I didn't take the job. I'm freelancing from Illinois with people in California. So I had to come up with a plan of like, how do I continue this? Where do I go from here? And that was an interesting story as well, but to benefit of the same people I worked with, having my back, vetting me, showing me opportunities, and again, presenting things that I had to walk through the door. But that to me as an introduction to the industry was like, oh my God, like these are my people. Like this isn't people I just work with. Like they want me in this club. They want me to be successful here. They want to support me. And it was never about like some sort of inclusive thing of like, you need to write for us, or you need to stay here, et cetera. They were like, you love the industry, you need to be in the industry at large. And I just remember that feeling. And when you and I talk about what it feels like, what it means to be in this industry, that was my indoctrination. And journalism was my entry, even though it was the shortest part of my career. Definitely the most important,
Do you remember the magic? I know this, we're going to continue to date ourselves, which is fine. The magic of receiving the first issues that, the issue that your stuff was in, that first moment when you get the magazine and you hold it in your hands.
Yeah.
I remember
the smell of the pages, they're fresh printed, and Dreamcast was like an oversized format. So it was like big and awesome. And you were like, wow. And incredible the amount of graphic design that went into it at the time.
Right.
Like we, as web has proliferated, now we're all like, everything's laid out in all these ways that we're so used to, and it's almost like homogenous, right?
Right.
But I remember the magazine always being different, like from article to article, there were all these things being tried and all these cool, like it's so full of color, it's so full of cool design, it was so full of experimentation, and yet it was cohesive. Every magazine of the time had its own thing, as you know, and that was the fact that it can surprise you every month and delight you every month, but still feel like that magazine, that outlook, that staff was really special. And I don't think we have that in the same way, even with, in terms of the online journalism right now, some great teams being decimated or thrown around or like not valued. Back then, that was your lifeblood, as a fan outside the industry and then being able to contribute to it, it was so cool to know that there were people whose opinions you respected, and you always felt like an insider. You always felt like, you were a step ahead. And also, let's not forget, at that time, gaming wasn't that cool yet.
You're right.
So Absolutely. You were an outsider insider. You were like, these were your people. This was where you felt like, at home. So.
Pre-internet, when, fan mail was a thing, and you get like, fan art on envelopes, and
I got a letter published in EGM, Greg.
Oh man!
And the reason I got it published, I snuck off. A friend of mine had a TV repair shop. His dad, TV repair shop, Magnavox TVs. I remember the sign up front, Schobert's TV, and I convinced my friend to have his dad pretend we worked for it so we could get passes to CES in Chicago.
Brilliant.
And my friend and I, somehow our parents allowed this. My friend and I took a train alone, unchaperoned, to Chicago to go to CES. And we went by the booth for EGM, and they were giving away issues. And I got an issue, and I walked around, and it was the CES. It was 1990. I want to say 1992. It was the debut of Sonic. So Sonic was debuted at that show. Everyone's mind was blown, all that. I came back and I wrote a letter to EGM and said something like, oh my gosh, saw the booth. You guys were giving away issues. You were really hot stuff. And they published my letter because it was, I guess, applauding them or whatnot. And they misspelled my name and everything, but I didn't care. I was just like, I think they used my middle name as my last name or something. I was so proud. I was like, oh my God, I'm part of it.
That's amazing. So for those of you who don't know, CES used to be the preemptive conference. It was twice a year for gaming, that is. Twice a year, once in Chicago during the summer, and then again in the winter in Vegas. And this predates E3. And I have so many fond memories. I was there. I was at that same CES you were, my friend. I'm sure, we've probably crossed paths more times than we even realize. And
I'm certain of that. I feel like if we could just isolate those moments, we would have been like 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, sort of.
Right. Without a doubt.
Without a doubt.
And the debut of Sonic the Hedgehog, crazy. So what an important moment for, at least for Sega and also for the industry. So yeah, okay. Why don't we move fast forward a little bit? I would love to kind of like talk to you about, at some point, clearly you made that jump from editorial to being, internal at a game publisher. I believe that was Sega. You can correct me.
Sega right after grad school. So I graduated
right after grad
school and was lucky enough to relocate to San Francisco, and that was the beginning of the real crazy times.
Yeah. Were you were you over in off of Daharo?
It was
that office
in Townsend, 800 Townsend or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
550 Townsend, 800 Townsend.
Right, the Zynga building.
8th and Townsend, I guess. Now the Zynga building. Don't say that. That's sacrilege.
I know.
It'll always be Sega and GameSpot and the beautiful things that were there. That building was wild.
It was a cool spot, man. Yeah, I remember going over there and seeing, getting a demo of Crazy Taxi.
Love it.
From
Love
our
Crazy
friend
Taxi.
Heather Hawkins.
Love Heather. Blue hair.
Yeah, good old
hair. Heather. Gotta love Heather. She was a shock to the system for me. Amazing. She was so cool.
So, okay, at some point, you made a move that probably most people in publishing don't make. You went from marketing games to actually making games. Pseudo Interactive, right? In Toronto, right. Full Auto. What was it like to be on the other side of that table for the first time?
It was amazing. And it's weird because I went to Pseudo from Ubisoft, but I made contact with the guys at Pseudo Interactive while I was still at Sega. So Sega had transitioned to third party. I went through that. That's probably a topic for an entire podcast, is what it was like to watch the company transform from the inside out. But the guys at Pseudo had created a Vectorman prototype and sent it in unsolicited and said, hey, what if? And got the attention of internal peeps who had me look at it, evaluate it. I was just a product manager, but we had a tight ship at Sega. Everybody really leaned on everyone and listened to everyone. I think, I credit Peter Moore for creating such a cool culture, such a appreciative culture. From his side, there was no unimportant job. He was that kind of boss. Just everybody got appreciation, and didn't shy away from the challenges, etc. But at that time, we were looking at opportunities. There was opportunity to do some crazy stuff, like have a developer from Toronto take hold of an IP that had lain dormant and do something funky with it. And that project is a whole other story. But those guys, Dan, Rich, and David were the three founders at Pseudo. I adored them. They were so kind, and I really championed that project. I tried to run it as far as I could. Ultimately, it went through a number of transformations, and Sega kind of balked on it, and things changed. You know how it is in terms of focus internally. Had to shift for a number of other reasons, some of which had to do with the game, most of which did not, which made it a muddy situation. But the end result was I trusted those guys and loved them. They trusted me. So when I went to Ubisoft to take the helm of Far Cry and launch that IP, which is another amazing opportunity, I stayed in touch. And when their producer left, they reached out to me and said, hey, I don't know if this is something you'd consider, but would you come be our producer for our next project? And it was a weird one. It kind of out of nowhere, but for me, talk about fence jumping. That was the biggest fence and the biggest jump. And I just come off of working with Crytek to finalize Far Cry. I had done more than most product managers, brand managers, because I'd actually been over to Germany. I'd given them a lot of critical feedback on the game. I'd served as someone who played it through and through. Every time I had access to a build, I gave them feedback, ultimately warranted. Like, I wasn't trying to drive the show or anything. I just knew there were things that they should hear. And they were very receptive and they loved it. I think similar to Pseudo, just someone outside who had different experience, who had a different view, who wasn't inside that dev vacuum, which I know all too well now. And they knew I was doing it for all the right reasons. I love their project. So I took it very seriously. when Pseudo Interactive asked, and I really felt like that was a definitive chance for me to finally get on the side of making the games that I'd been marketing for a long time. And it was a big move. I mean, I traded San Francisco for Toronto. It was my first time in Canada. I say to people when I drove into Toronto, when I moved there, it felt like home right away, which is weird, but I think it was a Midwest vibe. I think it was like, it felt like an extension of Illinois and Chicago. It's very down to earth. It felt like a cleaner, smaller New York to me. And I loved it there. And the opportunities that were afforded me were really above and beyond. I definitely struggled to learn a lot of what I didn't know. But I was also singularly unique at the studio with what I knew that no one there knew. So it was a really humbling experience, I think, ultimately. I think those that know me well would understand that, because you can go into something with a lot of passion and a lot of energy and still get your butt kicked every day by just having to learn the ropes. And there were a lot of ropes to learn, but there was a lot that I could contribute that I'm really proud that I did. And I wish Pseudo was still around. We had a long story there, but we actually got the chance to work with SEGA, who published Full Auto. So a lot of things came full circle in a really weird, wild way, which I'm appreciative for.
Is there anything that you learned during that time, as you were going through that probably very uncomfortable process of like figuring things out, that you've taken with you and put into practice time over time since?
I would like to say there is. The biggest thing I learned is that it's really hard to manage anything. It's really hard to manage people, and it was very hard. Lessons learned. There were things I'm sure we could have done better, but in the moment, we did the best we could. But we went through reduction in staff. We went through ultimately shutting down the studio. There were a lot of hardships that taught me humility, and I'm sure there are those that would say we didn't do it right. Right? You learn that you're going to do a disservice to people. Even when you do the best in the best of their interest, you're still going to be the enemy. And I'm okay with that. But I think ultimately it's weird because I'm still a softie, but it did harden me to go through those situations and to come out okay, and to come out trying to help as many people as possible, and to know that the churn and the up and down, the ebb and flow of our industry is just part of any industry, and that a lot of people landed on their feet and contributed in a huge way. It was a lot. The other weird lesson I learned that is fun to share is I got to do a lot of biz dev while I was there. So I was on the road with David Sears. He and I did a lot of pitching of new projects. So you learn to really never get too excited. Like, you learn that the studio plays off your emotions. So if we came back too enthusiastic for a deal that never would see the light of day, you're in control of that moral and energy at the studio. So we had to be like poker faced about stuff that we wanted to be excited about, but we had to always temper what news we were bringing, what we'd done. And no matter how enthusiastic anybody was, you kind of learn like, okay, until this is real, it's not real. Which is, again, another weird, mature thing, because I don't want to really be that way. Like, I want to wear my heart on my sleeve, and I want to be enthusiastic. But I think it was good for me as someone who can overdo that to learn to be tempered, to learn that your words have impact, and to learn that your passion has impact on your studio, to focus them. And then when the big wins do come, oh my gosh, celebrate like, till the cows come home. Like, it was a big deal when we had great news and we could actually report it. So
amazing. Having a studio shut down is terrible. Clearly, it's a gut punch, right?
Yeah.
What do you do the day after?
Oh gosh, Pseudo Interactive taught me a ton of things I didn't know. I never learned on the publishing side, in spite of working with really good people. One of, and this will come back to answer your question as to what we did. One of the things that they operated by, and this is the three founders, Dan, Rich, and David. They never got focused on blame or politics. They were engineers. So they were all about what is the problem and how do we fix it? And then if there's time to post-mortem it and figure out how to avoid that problem in the future, we'll do that. But at the core, they were very aware that people make mistakes. No one there was malicious. No one's trying to sabotage the project. Everyone has their heart in it. So they never wasted time pointing fingers. They never wasted time being angry with one another. They were so problem solution oriented. Coming from publishing, that was kind of a new concept. I'm a pragmatist. I try to be that way, but it was so refreshing. And I think they approached the simplest small issue the same way they approached the largest issues. So when it was apparent that we were going to shutter, their first actions were about severance. Their first actions were runway. How can they give people safety? How can they give people additional health insurance, even though we were in Canada? How can they give people the legs they need to go on with their careers? That was honestly, it sounds like I'm promoting them as if they're mythical, but that's who they were, and that's what they did. And then anything they could do to solve that in a more detailed fashion was they set up remote network servers so people could store their work and access it for their resumes. They allowed people to come in and put together their portfolios. They had workshops. They had people come in to give, whether you needed mental health advice or you needed advice on insurance or job search or whatnot. Like, they did all this support. It was all support. It was like, we're going to make this terrible situation the best it can possibly be. Yeah. And then they dealt with themselves to the point where I remember, for me, they gave me sort of a financial stipend at the end to say, this is for everything you've done. And we know you're an American and you're going to have to, leave the country eventually. Don't get a job, don't get another work permit. This is a big deal for you, and we want to make sure you're okay. And they did things they didn't have to do, and I'll always be thankful because it's who we want to be. I feel, when you watch somebody walk the frickin' walk, and you're like, God, I hope when I'm in a similar situation, that's who I am. Love those guys.
Yeah, guys. It is mythical. It feels unheard of, in this day and age, really. So it's lovely to hear. And, hopefully that we can manifest more of that going forward in this current state of things.
Take it that those people are out there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe they're not running the show in some major places right now. Maybe there's a lot of self-service kind of mentality, but they were beautiful. And for me, of course, I associate all that with being a Canadian. I was like, man, Canadians, they're amazing, but
they're so nice.
Yeah, they're so nice. They're so polite.
So nice.
As they've told me, they're not nice. They're just polite about it. Right. They were wonderful, but they'd also felt like my people, the Midwest, the work hard, play hard, the man of your word, all that stuff was so good. And I think that's something you want to promote and you want to find and you want to nurture. And I think when you and I talk about the industry, we see a lot of that. We're quick to point out good characters and good people, and amazingly people who have operated like that for decades. It's one thing to do a good turn for somebody. It's another thing to do good for people for ages. It's crazy. It should be recognized more. I wish.
I agree. But like we both agreed on, good people attract good people. So we just got to keep spreading that joy.
Yeah, agreed. 100%.
Okay. How about, there was something I found really interesting I wanted to talk to you about. There's a chapter in your career at a company called the Platform Group that produced two of what I would call the most unexpected games I've come across. One being Dead Island Retro Revenge, which for those of you who've not played it, it's a side-scrolling arcade brawler. And then also King's Tale Final Fantasy 15.
That's right.
Which you guys built with no access to the actual Final Fantasy 15 that was in development at the time. How does that even happen?
Yeah, how does that happen? Well, one couldn't have happened without the other. And
True.
And Dead Island Retro Revenge was such a fun story. Essentially at Platform was a creative agency that was kind of a sister agency of Union Editorial.
Yep.
So it's got its own origin story. I was able to go there after Square Enix and work with Todd and Josh, who were wonderful. But one thing I always envisioned was I wanted to be at a creative agency, but I wanted to be at a hybrid
There's
agency
that word
game
again.
development studio. Like I was like,
Yeah.
if we can make great creative, why can't we make games? Um, so that was something I wanted to do, but it wasn't really. We weren't able to actualize that per se. But the goal there was to create a game project where we could bring a developer in, pair them with an animation studio, and make something magical. And at the time, Square Enix, I had a lot of friends at Square because I'd been there, and these were my people. But they wanted to do something really interesting as a pre-order for Dead Island 2. And I was like, why not make a game? And I think they even floated that. Like, could we make a game? Could we do something like Hitman Sniper, like
Yeah.
something like that? And I was like, yeah, I think you could do something really cool with a retro, etc. Anyway, I spent weeks building a pitch. And I went in and I detailed, I had selected the partners, I'd done mock-ups. We had these really cool, we even did this amazing poster of original art of the main two characters. I had so much fun putting it together. And I think, in their words, we blew them away, but we also blew them away by how much it would actually cost. Because I was like, it's not, this isn't a $20,000 throw it like crappy game. Like, this is not derivative. It's not a reskin. You want to give players something real that we're not messing around. It wasn't exorbitantly expensive, but it's like, it takes money. You're going to go through prototyping. You're going to go through pre-production. You're going to go through production. You're going to test it. You're going to do this. This is a real game. This is going to be on PC, console, etc. And I think they were really impressed that we'd done the research. We had a plan. But ultimately, the funny thing about that project is we prototyped it. We built it. There are a few funny stories, but I won't get into all of them. Ultimately, the game that we were building for as an homage to Dead Island 2 was canceled. So all of the artwork, the concepts, the whole concept of our game was based on the concept of their game. It was a retroized version of it. From the locations to the factions, every enemy design we had was built as this homage to it. And all that went away. And the project switched developers and switched creative and was delayed. So these best laid plans, we were on time. We had this game that internally we had some ups and downs. It's an interesting story about people being able to see vision and how much you can communicate through prototype and gray box. And when art comes into play is when you should evaluate what the game is. But eventually we were beloved because we produced something that I think was better than anyone expected.
Yeah.
But for a game that didn't exist. So the sad part of that is all that hard work and this perfect pre-order was placed as like a bonus game inside a bundle for the original Dead Island, etc. And no one knew what to do with it because here was a game that was interpreted from a game no one knew. So they took Retro Revenge as its own thing and thought it was weird and what is going on and what is all this stuff? And it's like, oh my God, without the source material, of course you don't know what this is. Anyway, I stand by it. It was a great project, but it led to Square looking at it and going like, could you do it again? Like properly this time? Could you do it for Final Fantasy? And we jumped at the chance. We did a more ambitious game in probably half the time that we did Retro Revenge with a great team that then was well-oiled. And we had access to, the lore and the Bibles and the monsters of what was in 15. But as you said, we didn't have access to the game. We couldn't play it. We could see maybe some video, but it wasn't much, but we had access to those teams. So whatever we produced went to them for approval. And you'd think that would have been a nightmare, but it was actually great. They were so supportive. Everyone was so enthusiastic about the project. And ultimately, it saw the light of day as something that was, this proper interpretation of that world of characters that were in that game as younger versions of them in the same location, et cetera. So it was nice that we got to do what we set out to do initially and do it. And the other weird fact about that is we're still the only, I believe this is true. You can fact check me. the only Western developer to ever make a Final Fantasy game.
Yeah, crazy.
Like
Right.
we're a creative agency with Empty Clip as the developers and Powerhouse Animation out of Texas as the animators and Platform as this, the umbrella on it. But somehow we're the Western developer making Final Fantasy games. So yeah, it was wild.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. Was that tenure and that project or those projects, is that how you ended up at Square Enix, or was it the other way around?
The other way around. It was the contacts at Square that I knew well that we could pitch with. And we, Platform before I joined had done work with Square on a number of things. So going over there was kind of an extension. And then we got access to some of my favorite people. A lot of the brand teams that I'd worked with, like at IDOS Montreal, et cetera, knew me as marketing director. And I'd worked with them on creative projects, with other agencies. But then when I went to an agency, they could work with me inside an agency to do the work. So projects like Deus Ex Mankind Divided, the 101 trailer, we were entrusted with. And we were entrusted with, that one was great because we had source material that no one on the planet had seen. Right. So we had every cinematic from that game. We had, it was probably a 4-month trailer project and maybe longer. And that was amazing. We had access to Mary, their writer, the head of the writing team there. We had access to their talent and a really cool collaboration. And that was all through previous relationships of working at Square that were carried over. It wasn't cronyism. It was just so cool. It's like we all recognized what we brought to the table and sort of engineered projects that fit us. Like we weren't doing every trailer for them, but they were like, this is it. This is Cord and Platform. Let's go to them. Will you guys do it? So it was interesting to be sought out. It was obviously an RFP, but we were on the short list of people they trusted. And that meant a lot to me. It still does. Still means a lot.
Absolutely. That's so amazing. Like, again, like your arc is just kind of crazy to me. Again, the hybrid, right? I want to talk about what you got going on right now. I also really want to talk about Compulsion a little bit. So I don't want to be respectful of your time also, and also how long this podcast could go. So if, choose your own adventure, what would you prefer to go into? We'll get, we'll definitely spend some time on what you've got going on now. So I do want to make sure we cover that in detail because it's really interesting to me. So you tell me.
I think it's easier to talk about now because there's so much that isn't known and isn't out there. As far as Compulsion, shout out to them for the new IP win at the BAFTAs for South of Midnight. Shout out to that entire team. And I think, for where Compulsion started and where it is now is a journey that's best left to have a guest like Guillaume onto the podcast and let him tell you his side of the story, which is pretty amazing. But I'll always be thankful for what that was and talk about like grassroots weird getting a studio off the ground at that time. If anything, in my head, I think of the comparisons between the challenges we have now of trying to do it with Inevitable versus what was facing Guillaume with Compulsion and what I was able to do to help, but also what just a few of us were able to accomplish back then. Crazy to think how far they've come and still in touch with a number of people there that are very dear to me that actually have had a huge impact on what we're doing at Inevitable. So it's really great that it, the best of their creative side and the people that were involved in a lot of the projects that I just adore of what's come out of Compulsion are now able to give me sort of a leg up with some at least creative gut checks on what we're doing. And what we're doing is so different from, I think, the vibe and tone of what Compulsion is known for. So that's kind of cool as well. It's a new era.
Love it. All right, we're going to table that. So after all that, the AAA launches, you've been acquired in another lifetime as well. The big publisher world. You start your own studio from scratch in Frisco, Texas. Fully remote, right? International team working on something that is deeply personal to you. So what made you do that? What was the impetus? What finally made you do this?
It's in the name.
Yeah.
It was inevitable. I'd put it off. I'd put it off for so long. And I have to credit Compulsion was Guillaume's, it was his enthusiasm, his thing. He put it together. I got involved to help him and keep him afloat and like try to make that what it could be. But I feel he owns all of that accomplishment for Inevitable ever since. I mean, I guess as far back as forever, but really I remember in the Pseudo Interactive days when that studio went under. A lot of people, a lot of close friends, but Canadians turned to me in that dark hour and said, why don't you start something? Like, why don't we start our own thing? Could you start it? And I was really honored that people felt I could lead a new studio from scratch. But I also knew I was American, displaced in Canada. I didn't have the money or funding or investors to do that initially. I personally had to figure out what was next for me. And I didn't want to pull people into something where we were all strapped. I never wanted to do it where we were all eating, crackers and water.
Ramen.
I just didn't want to do it under that situation if we didn't have to. But I heard them. I heard them loud and clear, and I told them at the time, look, it's not now. But inevitably, we're all going to work together again. And so Inevitable Studios became like in my head, it was always back there. And then once Compulsion was acquired by Microsoft, we didn't have to eat, crackers and water. And at that point, the funding was there. It was like, okay, I don't have outside funding. I have internal funding. I really run out of excuses to at least give this a decent shot. And I pretty much immediately, and this is something, to Guillaume's credit and other people in my life, they were like, you should do this. You should start thinking about that or put the steps in motion. And I think initially it was like, what are those steps? It's like, okay, I put together a survey of I started in on concepts. I put together a survey to kind of reach out to my network and say who was willing to work remotely, what type of software should we use, what tools are you guys used to, what types of games does everyone want to make, what game engine should we do, et cetera. And just sort of put it out there that this is what I'm thinking, but I want input. This isn't something where I want to go do the chord show and you come help me produce it. This is, I want to do an us project and we need to do it together. Which is tough because there has to be a balance, right? Someone needs to drive. But that was my initial intent. And my thinking was, I'm going to get the band back together. I'm going to have people from Toronto and Montreal and San Francisco and LA, and I'm going to work with all these old friends somehow. And that's really not at all what ended up happening. What ended up happening is I have a new band, joined by a few old friends who are experts in their field that kind of spice up everything we're doing. But I've met all these new people, and I never used the term international for the studio once. It was always meant to be remote. Pre-pandemic, it was remote because I felt like we all have lives and I had friends everywhere. And I was like, we're not moving to one place because that one place will be great for 10% of us and terrible for 90% of us. Stay where you are, be awesome, contribute. And I'd already done 2 games remotely in Retro Revenge and in Kingsdale, and we had a blast. My main contact, Francois at Empty Clip, I never met face to face until after we'd shipped 2 games.
That's crazy.
It was amazing. But we had such a good time. We didn't even do video calls. It's insane. So yeah, it turned out to be this international crazy that feels not international at all. We're all driven by the same things. We love the project. We're guided by similar principles. I have a team who's crazy respectful and kind and creative, and it just got really lucky. I also have a team that can be as big as we need it and as small as it has to be, right? It can expand and contract without people worrying I got laid off. It's come work for a week. If the project says your work is needed for a week, that's what you'll get, and that's what I can offer. But no one's under any auspicions about I'm going to work here forever or this is a full-time gig. Mm-hmm. Meanwhile, I have employees contractors who've been working for 3 years now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of been a crazy experiment. And every now and then I kind of step back and go whoa, it compounds in terms of awesomeness. It also compounds in terms of responsibility because now we really have to ship something meaningful and we really have to ship In this day and age, it's more challenging than ever. But I feel great to have made the plunge, and I feel like it really truly was inevitable. And I hope what we're able to put together, people enjoy once it's finally out in the world. God, won't that be something?
We'll get there for sure. Yeah. And it's interesting. You said you came up with a handful of concepts. You took surveys. You talked to your team and other people that you respect. Kind of test drive those ideas before you chose which route to go. Ultimately, you came up with Always in Mind, which is about a 12-year-old boy in a coma who's, I believe he's exploring his family stories through his subconscious. And I would say that is not a typical first game for a new studio, but, and also really cool and ambitious, all the things. So tell me more about that. Why this story?
It's interesting. Well, I think on a challenging negative side, it could be tropey, etc. Oh my God, a boy's in a coma. Blah, blah, blah. It never started that way. I try not to see it. It's like we have to explain it out to get away from what people expect versus what inspired it, which initially it was an inspiration of technology in the mind. And I'd done some darker explorations of that, and then I did some more hopeful ones. And when I sent out the survey with concepts, it's interesting. Out of 6 concepts, there were 2 that kind of floated to the top, and one was very hopeful and positive and sort of beautiful in that we could kind of build anything to support the story, right? I mean, a boy in his mind, like, you can go lots of places. And then once you introduce the family, it's like, yeah, these characters can be anyone, anything, any interest. So it was boundless, and it was beautiful, and it was light. And then there was another concept that floated to the top that was small town, true crime, like so dark, so dark. And I developed both for a time. I developed the darker one with a writer who collaborated with me and kind of looked at a very branching story of down into this underbelly of a town that you just don't even realize how dark and deep it can go. And on the other side, we explored Always in Mind, and at the time it was Project Algernon. It was more, it was deeper into the tech almost as a child. It inverted the roles where you had tech that gave you incredible powers and then tech that became a liability. So imagine an AI that could do anything for you, suddenly you're bond with, but then it malfunctions and it's the liability now. Now you have to shepherd it through the other half of the journey. And that was, that was a cool exploration from a game design standpoint, but for us, it really was about how do we bond people to this thing. And it was pre-AI. It was, how we all know AI today. Very, very different from what we conceived in 2019 for this story. And I think what solidified it for me was I had to take time to learn the tech. I had to get back into an engine. I had to really feel like I could walk the walk and prototype something to show people more of what this could be so that they'd know how they could get involved. So I spent I had the luxury of spending years to really bone up on tech and get, it was an old dog learning new tricks. It still is. Every day is old dog learning new tricks. But when the pandemic hit, is when things really crystallized, because a month into the actual official pandemic, we welcomed our son, Max, into the world. And so Max being born into this time of turmoil, it was scary, right? It's still scary. I find we don't talk about it much, but I think people are still scared. We're all, obviously, the world's affected by it. Not that the world's in the amazing space now, but it was daunting. And I think the seed of the story of Always in Mind was about not just hope, but it was always about connection. And not just reconnecting to a family, but how we connect to things, how we connect to passions, how you could connect to even this artificial entity, right? There were all these levels of connection. And, you're a dad, so you know this. I hadn't had a child yet, and I had friends who'd had children my whole life. And it wasn't until Max was born that I knew what they were talking about.
Changes everything.
I always thought I knew.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
And that was such a catalyst for me to say, okay, no more consulting, no more, fiddling around an engine, no more wasting time. I have to tell this story. And I felt like I needed it. I could pretend like, oh, the world needed it. I don't know that the
Yeah.
world's even going to respond to a positive story, but I needed it. I wanted to tell this story, and I wanted to make this game, and I wanted to figure out what that game really was. And Max was the inspiration to really not change gears, but
Yeah.
focus everything in my life that wasn't family into building this studio around building this game. And that changed everything. And then, there are lots of steps to that story, but where we are today is there have been a number of really amazing people that I've somehow convinced to take that journey with me. And I'm as excited as ever. You'd think I'd be done with it by now or burn out. And I don't think that's a credit to me and probably a credit to the team. But yeah, I'm as passionate today about not just completing this game. I joke like, yes, I want to ship it. I want it to be out there, but I'm still having the time of my life, seeing where it takes us. So it's been great. Been a really worthwhile journey.
Talk more about the game. Like, what are some of the highlights, the mechanics, what resonates with you when you get your hands on the controller? How is the development going? Yeah.
I've happily. Well, I think it's interesting because I was just talking about gimmick games and things like that with my wife today about like people who have a high concept or something easy, and I'm like, man, we really did a detriment to ourselves because we started with how do we pair a deep narrative game with familiar controls, right? My goal was, as a fan of narrative games, my goal was to give you more to do, to give you a richer world to explore and learn through your own means in a way that people are familiar with. And I never really set out to make a platformer. If you look at the early documentation and all the concept work, and it's broken into design and art and, marketing and brand, all this stuff for Always in Mind. I never even described it as a platformer. It just over time became, how do you control a kid in his mind? What would he do? And part of the story that became that is like, well, he'd think of it like a video game. Like he's instructed by the AI, by his buddy Proxy, to think of it as a video game. Like just think of it like a video game. Don't be scared. Don't be freaked out. Just think of it like a video game. And so we even trained the player to kind of play a video game inside this video game to kind of be at home. And to do that, it's standardized stuff. It's running and sprinting and jumping and double jumping, and we give you everything kind of from the get-go in that regard. I'm torn on the side of like the Metroidvanias of like, I want to become more and more empowered and therefore conquer more and more of a map. I get that gratification. I love those games. Wasn't what I wanted to build, right? I didn't want you to feel the game was preventing you from story or fun. It kind of goes back to what Evan was saying about Tony Hawk. It's like, can't I give you a lot of stuff that you can do right from the start and you figure out how to have fun with it? So that's really what we do. We let you paraglide and warp and double jump and all these things that should be normally earned in other games. And we just kind of set you loose because the power fantasy isn't that. The power fantasy is what you're going to find. We always lean on, this is something my friend David Sears always told me and really professed about, was surprise and delight in games, right?
Yep.
Always surprise and delight your player. Always give them something new. Always keep them guessing. Always what's around that turn. Like if you want someone to be motivated to follow your story, it's not just making the story interesting. Where does the story take them? And that's what we focused on. Now, in addition to that, we give you some pretty crazy mechanics, but they're all associated with the family. So as you learn, these family stories, each family story provides Teddy with a new ability. And in that, we get pretty crazy, which again, pros, we allow you to manifest memories in the world and bring things together with the power of the orb, which is Proxy. We allow you to invert gravity and walk on walls and all this. We allow you to dilate time and change the entire world into a calm state when you're surrounded and overwhelmed by social anxiety. Like, we do some pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But in the end, we're also doing a lot for an indie. So for me, it's like, you'd think one of those lessons I'd learned was do one thing and do it well. But that's not where the story took us. And it's not where the game kind of felt like it needed to go. So we painted ourselves into a corner, and now we have to do all these things really, really well. And thankfully, even though it's taken a lot of time, we're now at a point where I feel like we're getting more right than we're getting wrong. And it's time to polish that and feel exactly how far it can go. So I'd say, as far as, update on the game, we're approaching a strong alpha. We have a very peaks and valleys sort of project where we have a lot of stuff we've finaled to show or pitch, and then we have a lot of stuff that's gray box, less stuff that's gray box that is close to final. But it's this time in the project where the amount of polish and the amount of realization is kind of crazy, because every time I feel like we've taken things to the point of exhaustion, like, that's as much as we can do. This is as much as we can afford to do. We're somehow afforded a chance to go back to it and give it one more layer of polish or one more little crank, and suddenly it solidifies into something that's more than what we expected. And that's so beautiful. We also have, the combination of things. We spent a long time and a lot of effort creating comics for our characters, an illustrated ending for the game, and all these things. And seeing those actually be within the game when the game is at a level of realization and the gameplay feels really good and the audio and music is all in there, it's been more gratifying than any project I've been a part of, in the sense of, like, when it all comes together, it really comes together. So and maybe that's part of my motivation now, is like, there's every day I feel like it's going, my confidence that it will be a better game than even I expected or what I felt we could build is true. But also, tweaking and tuning those things is super fun as a creative. Like, oh my God, let's work on the lighting. Oh, let's tweak the post. Let's, that line's bothered me forever. We got to change that word. It's those little things, like, I had a poetry professor once who said a writer went away for a weekend in the woods. He had a poem that he wanted to finish. And when he got back, they said, "How did it go?" And he said, "Oh, I spent, 72 hours staring at a semicolon. And on the last day, I changed it to a comma." And they said, "Oh," and he goes, "And then when I got home, I changed it back. It was a wild success. It was a great weekend. I did everything I needed to do." It's like, okay.
It's a journey.
Yeah, it's a journey.
Yeah. Speaking of the journey, I mean, all journeys eventually come to an end. What does that look like for you from a development perspective? Do you have a date or a time or we got to go pens down by X to, get the game out and in people's hands?
I do. I'm hoping that we can announce a release window soon.
Awesome.
As of today, just got an acceptance, fortunately, into a small showcase for this summer, indie showcase. So Brilliant. Things are, it's that weird time where, I'm not skirting around your question, but it's a weird time in the industry where I feel like we need external factors to align for us to put effort into really breaking through, because breaking through and awareness and discoverability are such an issue right now with so many games.
It's a challenge.
In the last month, we put together a new pitch package that goes out, as you can imagine, investors, publishers, et cetera, looking for what opportunities are out there to help us get over the finish line, or at least, accentuate our marketing efforts, our promotional efforts, connect with communities, et cetera. So having a publisher certainly comes with advantages and disadvantages, but it's something we still want to entertain. At the same time, we've had the same assets go out for a number of showcases. So we're just now starting to potentially hear back. Today was a positive. We'll see what that plan, how that plan goes, and what we participate in, and what we can put together. Then it kind of kicks into a whole other machine that you're very familiar with. Like, what do we do for a trailer that isn't the next big trailer? How do we provide people assets to a certain audience that are really, up their alley? Like, I think you really want to pay attention and respect the audiences for particular showcases. Fortunately, we are sitting on some pretty amazing Amazing. I shouldn't say that. It sounds so pretentious. Some very solid, well tested, well polished playables. So, we have that new build that's gone out to publishers that we could use. So if we have an opportunity to put the game in people's hands, we can do so in the near future. We also have, as I said, as we're approaching alpha, we have footage from so much of the game.
Yeah.
So, I always go back to the original pitch trailer. I built the pitch for the game through about a year of being kind of a solo dev. I had a programmer who helped, but gave me, I think at that time, 5 to 10 hours a week or something. Like it was small, but it was very critical. Had an audio designer at the very end help out a little bit, but it was felt like a very individual effort for about a year to pitch. But that pitch was comprehensive. It was a lot of store-bought assets, the Unity asset store.
Yep.
But that trailer kind of felt like it encompassed everything I wanted the game to be. It had the sledding, it had various worlds, it had the different abilities all in a prototype phase, but it felt good to me. It also ended on something very heartfelt. So it was kind of, look at this magical world, but in the end you're like, whoa, it's going to make me feel things.
Yeah, give me the feels.
Yeah, and I'm chasing that. That's the next trailer I want to make, is something that's a spiritual, successor to that pitch trailer. And we now have, so much of the game built that I feel we can finally do it. We also have some really wild, weird offshoot brand ideas of, like, I don't know how you are. Like, if you sit with a creative, or, if you're interpreting someone else's brand, you come up with such wild concepts, and you're like, this will never work, or it's not really on brand. But your materials inspired me to think about this crazy idea, or could we use the characters to do this, or could we pay homage to that, or could we do a parody of that? And we're at the point now where we can do that with our own material. It's like I personally have some really kind of crazy, cool, creative ideas, but then I'm like, that may give people the wrong idea about what this game is and isn't. But to me, it's... it's the inside baseball type trailer where, had you played the game, it would be a great fan trailer. If you knew everything about the game, this concept would make sense to you. But if it's your first touch with the property, you're probably like, okay, like it's like Dead Island Retro Revenge again. You're like, what is this?
It's like I came into the middle of a movie.
Yeah, exactly. I stumbled into the wrong theater. I got popcorn. I came. What is this? Amazing.
Well, where can people find Inevitable Studios and follow Always in Mind's development?
Well, search Always in Mind. Search Inevitable. No, we have a website. You can go to inevitablestudios.com. The Steam page is up. There's a weird wrinkle to all that. If for those that know Always in Mind, you'll be like, wasn't there a demo for that game 2 years ago? There was. We took a very unorthodox strategy, and I was also very ambitious about how much we could accomplish. I didn't mention that my team works 20-hour weeks by default, not 40, which gives us a chance to be, hyper detailed and review and be human and avoid crunch and all that. So things have gone slower, but we really worked hard to create that demo a long time ago, partly to establish that the IP existed, as well as that the studio existed, because we rely on recruitment to bring in the right contractors, and because I wanted people to be aware.
Awareness.
We tried. I think it ultimately will work against us because of the long delay, but in a way it also gives us a chance, because I think there's so much people haven't seen that we can almost treat this this coming summer as a re-announcement of the title. So, if you go to the Steam page, you'll see we didn't take that demo down. I left it up. I didn't make it exclusive. It's there. It's older. It represents work from 2 years ago. But we'll start to refresh that Steam page with a brand new key art, whole new look to the game that's an enhancement off the original, all new screenshots, new videos, things like that. So I think it's a really cool time. We're a few months out from sort of like refreshing the entire thing, and I think reframing what people think of it or what it can be. It's also, at this point, we can consolidate down what it is, right? We know the story inside and out. We know these characters better than ever. We have so many cool things we want to share, and it's been a weird journey being an indie dev. My intention starting the studio was to be as transparent as possible. Show everything, warts and all, like be out there, write blogs as often as possible and share everything. And it's weird that the industry doesn't make that easy. I also feel like, when you're an indie pitching, I feel like we hold back on a lot of stuff that maybe people would think that's what the game is or that's what it looks like. It's even hard to have fun with your own game when you're a new IP, similar to what I was talking about of weird concept trailers. Like you really can't afford any confusion about who you are because you are competing with thousands of titles out there, on this wide spectrum of quality and this wide spectrum of creativity. So we haven't been able to be as crazy and loose with that, but like a ton of early stuff on the website was taken down years ago that I thought was super cool. I want to show you the prototypes. I want to show you the weird stuff, the experiments we tried, because a lot of that to me was so exciting. It was exciting to be a part of that dev side and show things that other AAA studios, we're super indie, they're never allowed to show. And yet that hasn't really happened. So I'm hoping maybe there are opportunities as we go forward that we can start to expose more of that, because I would like to inspire people because let's face it, we all have the means and the tools now to explore ideas and to create games of some type. Maybe not what we're making. I'm not going to say you can make our game with AI and a prompt. You can't. It's years and years and years of a lot of decisions, but I want to encourage people to get out there and chase it and not wait. I think in my position, given the career I've had and the fences I've jumped, it felt prudent to wait until the stars kind of aligned. But don't, if you're out there and you want to do it, find a way at least to inch yourself closer. I have friends now that I think who have been adjacent to the project that I hope are somewhat inspired by my journey and my team's journey, that they're like, yeah, man, I installed Unity the other day, or I'm going to dive in. And it's like, great, dive in. Because you know what? I'll be to you what I didn't have. I will cheerlead you. I'll answer your questions. I will give you pro tips. But also there are so many resources out there. Get in and do it, man. And these are people who are very accomplished, Greg, people who can do really amazing things, and they have careers they love that they're successful at, but they love games so much they can't stop themselves from wanting to make them. And I say, go for it.
Love it. Love it. And, really, like Cord, you are what I would call a good friend, an extraordinary person. Your heart is on your sleeve. I love that. I think more of to your point, I wish more, studio heads and people in the thick of it, should share their stories, and maybe that's what this podcast hopefully will be about. But, I would encourage people listening to go to the Always in Mind website or the Inevitable Studios website. You have a blog up there that has some really, really great reads, deep reads. You wrote something earlier this year called We Survived 2025, which I read. Was, unusual for someone to speak so candidly and honestly. And I think that's super refreshing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we're close to time. I feel like I've taken a lot of your time. I do this thing every episode, of Replay. We end the same way. The show is called Replay. And so I want to ask you if you could go back and replay one game, experience it again, completely fresh, for the very first time, what would it be and why?
Wow, thanks for the heads up on this one. Jesus. Can we
so
go by
many
system? Yeah,
right.
Can we? I can pick one per system.
Sure. Well, you can just pick one.
I'm kidding. I'll pick one. Boy, oh boy. It came up recently. I think this will be a stretch. Maybe it wouldn't be the.
I can share mine if that's helpful.
Ooh, really? Yeah. Do you share the same one every episode?
I guess it'll be boring for me to repeat the same thing. So we'll find out. But my all-time desert island game, and one that I love so dearly and so much, and wish I could re-experience it, fresh every time. But I still play it multiple times because I do love it so much. Is Shadow of the Colossus. It is, one of those.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to, story games is art. Story, is just as important as the game itself. So much emotion, so amazing. The scope, it's epic. It's everything. quiet. I don't know. It's my jam.
It's a masterpiece.
It really is. Yeah.
I was able to play that with my nieces.
Wow.
They sat
That's
with me
cool.
and played it when they were like 8, and they told me a story about watching me play it this last year. It still sticks with them.
That's
and
super cool.
it stuck with me because they helped and saw things in that game I didn't notice.
Yeah.
And they fell in love with the horse. Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
They fell in love with everything, and they said they're scarred by it, but they remember it, and it was a joyous time. And that I got to share that with them was really, it made it a different experience than what you had. But that game will always be very special to me. Oh, that's a great one. Wow. Okay.
Did I steal yours?
No, and I won't do Ico or Eco,
Right.
however you want to pronounce it as well. Like
Another
just to get
game.
into there, another great game.
Yeah.
I was going to say, and it's not accurate necessarily, but it popped to mind, so I might as well say it. And I should caveat that my family is so annoyed with me because I always say I don't have favorites. I will talk around a movie, like, what's your favorite Pixar movie? We'll have a 2-hour-long discussion of me avoiding picking a favorite because I'll talk about all the ones I love. So to have so many games that have played and affected me through my life, but the one that popped out to me, which is weird, and I don't know why, but I'll honor it, is Panzer Dragoon Saga.
Such a great game.
And something about, like, maybe it was just childhood coming back, but there was something so emotional. And there was a story I told recently about the team that made that, and there's a lot of lore behind it. But I can hear the music in my head right now. I can see the moments. I remember what it was like, and I know how pixely and et cetera, but the 3D world of flying that dragon through a burning forest, or the real-time turn-based combat, but swooping around in the skies to get the technical advantage, or just even the early CG. It wasn't even the CG, storytelling parts that got me. It was something about that world that I felt was so unique, and I don't know, it gets under your skin in a weird way. It's a weird one, but I'd say that. I think that's a decent submission, but you should have me on multiple times, and I'll come with a new favorite every time, because I literally have so many games that I love that I know have left deep marks on me.
You picked a great one, just so you know. I couldn't agree more. It is an epic, amazing game that still people talk fondly about, that had the chance to play it originally on the Saturn. So you chose well, and I'm sure as soon as we get off this podcast, you're gonna be like, oh man,
I'll send you an email with like 50 others.
I'm sure you will, as you should.
That's beautiful. I love the ending. It'll be so interesting to see what people pick. That's wonderful.
Very cool. Cord Smith, thank you so much for your time today, for coming on the show, talking about all the great stuff. I hope you will come back and make this an annual thing.
I would love it. We can
come on and celebrate the launch of Always in Mind.
I would do that on the day for you. I would love to be I'd honor the support that you give us and the enthusiasm you build in me, for sure. I would love to come back and talk about it in a positive fashion, even if it's just a lot of just going like, whew,
we did it.
We did it. I might be exhausted.
I'm going to Disneyland.
I'd still come on. I'd be like, I'm going to sleep.
Oh, thank you so much, my friend. Really a pleasure.
Thank you. No, it was great. Thanks for having me. I love it.
Absolutely. And that's Cord Smith, studio head at Inevitable Studios. Links to everything he mentioned are in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow or subscribe wherever you listen, and share it with someone who loves games as much as we do. I'm Greg Off, and this is Replay.